Captain Jack Ward sat alone in the dimly lit control room aboard the human outpost, far from Earth and deep within uncharted space. He had seen many strange things during his years as a soldier: alien ships, hostile worlds, and mysterious forces, but nothing like this. His eyes scanned the blinking lights on the console in front of him, the quiet hum of the ship's systems his only companion. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden crackle from the communication device. A voice came through, soft and clear, but with an edge of urgency. It was alien, of course, but not one he had heard before. The voice spoke with a confidence that suggested authority, yet there was an underlying tone that made Ward's instincts sharpen. "Captain Ward," the voice said, calm but commanding, "I am Princess Liara of the Ziltharian Empire. I need to speak with you urgently." Ward's fingers froze over the control panel. The name struck a chord. The Ziltharians were an ancient alien species, known for their advanced technology and mysterious politics. Their royal family was famous across the galaxy, but their dealings with humans were few. To be summoned by the princess herself was an honor and a mystery. Why was she calling him? What did she want? "Princess Liara," he muttered to himself, running his hand through his short-cropped hair. He had heard stories about her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had been rumored to be a powerful force within her empire. But why would she want to speak with a simple soldier like him? "Come to the royal ship," Liara continued, her voice suddenly tinged with a hint of desperation. "I need your help, Captain. It's a matter of great importance." Ward hesitated. This wasn't a typical mission. No briefing. No intelligence. Just a mysterious message from an alien princess. Something didn't sit right with him, but curiosity tugged at his mind. After a moment of silence, he responded, "I'm on my way, Princess." He stood, gathering his gear, still unsure of what he was walking into. A sense of unease washed over him, but his training as a soldier had prepared him for the unknown. He had faced much worse. He quickly made his way to the transport dock, where a sleek, alien ship awaited him. The royal ship was enormous. Its black hull gleamed under the pale light of the distant stars. As Ward stepped inside, he was struck by the vastness of the ship's interior, far beyond anything he had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft, otherworldly glow, and the air was thick with the hum of alien technology. Ward's boots clicked against the floor as he followed the guards down long, winding corridors. When they arrived at the throne room, Ward's heart skipped a beat. There, standing before him, was Princess Liara. She was tall and elegant, with long flowing silver hair that shimmered like starlight. Her eyes glowed with an ethereal blue hue, and her presence was nothing short of commanding. She wore a regal gown, decorated with symbols Ward didn't recognize, each one more intricate than the last. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something else about her, an air of mystery that seemed to surround her. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice soft but firm, "thank you for coming." Ward didn't know what to say. He had dealt with powerful leaders before, but this was different. There was an undeniable power in her presence, and it left him feeling slightly off balance. He nodded and took a step forward, trying to remain calm. "I came as you requested, Princess." "What's this about? Why me?" Liara smiled faintly, but there was a nervous edge to her expression. She gestured to the massive chair beside her throne, her eyes briefly flicking to it before meeting Ward's gaze. "Please sit," she said, motioning to the chair. "It's big. Sit here." Ward blinked in surprise. The chair next to her throne was enormous, easily 3 times the size of a normal seat. He looked at Liara, trying to understand her words. Why had she asked him to sit there? Was there some significance to the chair? For a moment, Ward hesitated. He had been in countless awkward situations before, but this one felt different. Something about her words felt loaded, like there was more to the request than met the eye. Still, he didn't want to appear rude, so he stepped forward and sat down. The chair was surprisingly comfortable, the soft material sinking under his weight as he settled into it. Lyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment, and Ward noticed a slight blush creeping into her cheeks. He couldn't help but wonder if she was nervous. The princess, powerful and poised, was blushing. It was an unexpected sight. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Ward's mind raced as he tried to understand the situation. Why was she nervous? What was she trying to show him? He shifted uncomfortably in the oversized chair, feeling a strange tension in the air. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice steady once again. "Captain, I'm in need of your help," she said, her gaze serious now. "My people are in danger. There is a growing threat to my empire, and I can't face it alone. You are the one I trust to help me save my people." Ward's heart skipped a beat. The princess, with all her power and influence, was asking for his help? This was no ordinary request. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. "What kind of threat?" he asked, "and why me?" Lyra's gaze softened as she stepped closer. "It's not just a military threat, Captain. It's a political one. A conspiracy is brewing within my own ranks. I need someone who can see through the lies and who has the experience to deal with such dangers." Ward thought for a moment. He had dealt with dangerous enemies before, but he had never been in a situation like this. A political conspiracy in an alien empire? It was far more than he had expected. He stared at Lyra, trying to read her expression, to see if she was hiding something. But her face was earnest, and the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. "I'll help you," Ward said, his voice firm. "But I need to know more. You're not telling me everything." Lyra nodded, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made Ward's skin crawl. "I will tell you everything, Captain. But first, you must understand, this is just the beginning." And so the story began. A mysterious request. A dangerous mission. And a soldier who was about to be swept into something far larger than he could ever have imagined. Captain Jack Ward stood in the grand hall of the royal ship, trying to suppress the strange tension that had settled in his chest. The throne room was unlike anything he had ever seen, with walls that shimmered faintly like the surface of an alien ocean, and a ceiling high enough to make even the seasoned veteran feel small. The air was thick with the hum of Ziltharian technology, which seemed to pulse in rhythm with the beats of his own heart. Before him, Princess Lyra stood tall, elegant, and radiating an aura of power that no soldier, no matter how hardened, could easily ignore. Her silver hair cascaded down her back like liquid moonlight, and her skin shimmered with an otherworldly glow. But what struck Ward most was the look in her eyes, an unsettling mix of confidence and vulnerability that made him question what kind of ruler she truly was. Lyra stepped forward, her gaze softening as she approached him. Despite her regal composure, she seemed nervous. It was an odd feeling, considering her reputation. Princess Lyra was known to be a tactician, a brilliant leader. Yet now there was a hint of uncertainty in her stance, a faint tremor in her hands as she gestured toward the massive chair beside her throne. "Please, Captain," she said, her voice warm yet with a touch of hesitation. "Sit here." Ward glanced at the chair, which was far too large for a normal person. It was more like a throne itself, massive, plush, and clearly designed to accommodate someone of great importance. The soft cushions beckoned, but Ward felt an inexplicable unease at the sight of it. Was this some kind of test? The princess was acting strangely, and Ward couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this request than a simple invitation to sit. "I don't quite understand," Ward murmured, glancing back up at Lyra, who stood just a few feet away. Her delicate features were framed by the soft glow of the throne room's lights, and for a moment, he saw her in a new light, not just a royal figure, but a woman facing something unknown. Perhaps even something beyond her control. She smiled faintly, though the blush still colored her cheeks. It's big. Sit here, she repeated softly, her voice almost a whisper. I know it's a bit unconventional, but it is a symbol of trust, Captain. Of respect. Ward took a cautious step toward the chair, his boots clicking softly against the smooth floor. He hesitated before sitting, feeling a strange pressure in the air around him. The princess's eyes followed his every movement, and it seemed as if the entire room had grown still. The chair seemed almost to swallow him as he sank into its deep, plush surface. It was comfortable, too comfortable, and for a moment, Ward couldn't help but feel disoriented, as if the very act of sitting in it might make him a part of something far bigger than he ever intended. Liara settled herself in the smaller seat next to him. Still close, but at a distance that suggested both intimacy and restraint. She didn't speak right away, and for a moment, the silence between them seemed to stretch longer than it should. Ward fought the urge to ask her what she wanted, why she had summoned him. But something told him that asking too soon would only make things more complicated. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Liara spoke. You are someone who has lived through war, through conflict, and yet you have not lost your humanity. You see the world as it is, not as you want it to be. And I need someone who can understand what is happening to my people. Ward stared at her for a long moment. Her words caught him off guard. He had been in countless battles, fought for governments and causes he didn't always believe in. But this was different. This wasn't about a paycheck or an order from above. This was personal for her, and in some strange way, Ward felt that it was becoming personal for him too. What's happening to your people? Ward asked, his voice low and steady. His eyes narrowed, instinctively searching for any sign of deception. Liara sighed, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of her seat. There are forces within my own empire trying to tear it apart. Political factions, military rebels. And there are whispers of a coup. But it's worse than that. They're not just after my throne, they want to erase the very foundation of my family's rule. The people I trust most are the ones plotting behind my back. Ward leaned forward, his soldier's instincts kicking in. This was no ordinary political dispute. Who are these people? Why haven't you done something about them? Liara's eyes darkened, and she turned her gaze away for just a moment, almost as if she was ashamed. It's not that simple, Captain. Some of these people are close to me, allies from my past. I can't just order them eliminated, no matter how dangerous they might be. That's where you come in. I need someone with your experience. Ward was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined when he first answered her call. He had been expecting a mission, maybe a simple rescue or some kind of diplomatic gesture. But this was an internal struggle, one that could tear apart the very fabric of an alien empire. Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time, Ward saw something in her eyes that he hadn't noticed before. Fear. The fear of someone who had lost control of the situation, who could no longer trust the people around her. I need you, Captain, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need someone who can see what I can't. Someone who can navigate this tangled mess and protect my people. Will you help me? Ward looked at her, his mind racing. He had come here expecting a mission, but now it seemed as if he had stumbled into something much darker. Something that was already in motion. He had to decide whether to take the plunge and trust this alien princess, or to walk away from the danger that was closing in on them both. All right. Ward said finally, his voice firm. I'll help you. But I need to know everything. You can't leave anything out. Liara nodded, her expression serious. You'll have the full truth, Captain. And once you know it, you'll understand why we need to act quickly. Time is running out. As Ward sat back in the massive chair, the weight of her words pressed down on him. The fate of an entire empire, a royal family, and a galaxy hung in the balance. And somehow he had just become part of it. Captain Jack Ward sat in the massive chair beside Princess Liara, trying to adjust to the overwhelming nature of the situation. The cool, comfortable seat that had once felt so strangely inviting now felt like a trap. It wasn't just the size of the chair, it was the weight of what he was being asked to do. The princess, a figure of authority and grace, was leaning toward him, her expression serious. But there was something in her eyes that spoke of uncertainty. "We don't have much time." "Captain," she said, her voice steady but urgent, "my enemies are already making moves. They know I've reached out for help, and soon they'll make their move. We need to act fast, and we need a plan." Ward nodded, his military instincts kicking in. He had dealt with battles, wars, and covert operations, but this was a whole different kind of fight. This wasn't just about guns and bombs. It was about navigating the dangerous world of politics, betrayals, and lies. And the more Liara spoke, the more Ward realized that he was in deeper than he had ever imagined. Liara stood and walked to a large holographic table in the center of the room. As she placed her hand on the surface, the table flickered to life, projecting a 3D map of the Ziltharian Empire. Ward's eyes widened as he saw the vast stretches of space on display, the planets, moons, and star systems under her control. "This is my empire," Liara said, her voice almost distant as she stared at the hologram. "I've spent my entire life learning how to govern, to protect my people. But now I realize that I know so little about the true forces at play behind the scenes." Ward studied the map, taking in the complex network of colonies and military bases. He could see the political divisions marked in various colors, each one representing different factions and alliances within her empire. It was a web of connections, betrayals, and hidden loyalties. His mind began to race, trying to make sense of it all. Who's behind this? Ward asked, his voice calm but with a hint of disbelief. "This coup, these rebels, who can we trust?" Liara hesitated before responding, her fingers running across the holographic map. "There are many players involved. Some are from my own family. My uncle Lord Thalrix is one of the most dangerous. He's been quietly gathering supporters, building an army. Others are military leaders who are tired of my leadership. They want more power. But the worst part is that I don't know who's loyal to me anymore." Ward could see the strain in her eyes. The weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just a power struggle, it was a family war, a fight for survival. Liara was fighting not only for her throne, but for the very future of her people. And from the way she spoke, Ward knew that every decision she made would be crucial. "We need to get ahead of them," Ward said, a plan beginning to form in his mind. "We can't wait for them to make their move. We need to find out who's with us and who's against us before they strike." Liara nodded, her eyes meeting his. "I agree. But I need someone who understands how to move through these situations without tipping the balance too soon. Someone who can see the danger before it's too late." Ward stood up from the chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had been a soldier, a warrior, all his life. But this was something else entirely. This wasn't a battlefield he could fight with guns and tactics. This was a battle of trust, loyalty, and survival. And Liara was counting on him to guide her through it. "I can help you, Princess," Ward said, his voice firm. "But I need to understand everything. I need to know your enemies, your allies, and every secret that's been kept hidden from you." Liara's gaze softened as she looked at him. "You'll know everything, Captain. But first, we need to do something that may be difficult. We need to test those closest to me." Ward raised an eyebrow. "Test them? How?" Liara smiled, though there was no joy in it. "We'll start with my advisors. I've been hearing whispers of discontent within my own council. Some are too close to my uncle, and some are too eager to see my reign end. We need to get them talking, see who can be trusted. It's the only way we'll know who's truly on our side. Ward's mind clicked into gear. This was exactly what he had been trained for: finding the enemy within, identifying the threat before it could strike. But this wasn't a simple mission. This wasn't just about fighting a battle. It was about playing a game, a dangerous, high-stakes game where every move mattered. We'll need to set a trap, Ward said, his tone calculating. Make them believe they can manipulate us. Make them show their true colors. Liara nodded, impressed by his sharpness. That's exactly what I had in mind. But be careful, Captain. This is not a game we can afford to lose. Ward felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just about saving a kingdom, it was about saving everything Liara had worked for, everything she had fought to protect. And now her fate and the fate of her empire rested on his shoulders. Liara stood and walked toward a nearby door. I've arranged a meeting with my council for tomorrow. It's the perfect opportunity to test their loyalty. But we'll need your help to make it work. Ward followed her, his mind already racing through the possibilities. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. But one thing was clear: this was just the beginning. A political battle had begun, and the first moves would determine whether they could survive the coming storm. Captain Jack Ward paced slowly through the halls of the royal ship, his boots echoing against the smooth, polished floors. The weight of his mission felt heavier now. It wasn't just about tactics in combat. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about uncovering the hidden truths beneath layers of deception, betrayal, and political games. And the deeper he dug, the more complicated the web seemed to get. Ward had always been a soldier, used to quick decisions, direct action, and clear-cut objectives. But now, he found himself in a different kind of battle, a battle where every word, every glance, every gesture mattered. And that battle was taking place right in the heart of the royal ship. Among Liara's closest allies and advisors, the princess had asked him to help root out those who might be plotting against her, to find out who could be trusted and who was merely waiting for the right moment to strike. But even Ward, with all his years of experience, wasn't sure where to begin. How could you find a traitor in a room full of shadows? He pushed the door open and stepped inside, where Liara stood by a large, star-filled window, gazing out into the abyss of space. Her silver hair caught the light of distant stars, and her expression was unreadable. The serene beauty of the scene only seemed to deepen the tension in the air. "You wanted to see me, Princess?" Ward asked, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of concern. Liara turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his. There was a new resolve in her gaze, but also a hint of something else, a kind of weariness that he hadn't seen before. She motioned for him to sit, and this time, Ward didn't hesitate. "I've made the decision to move forward," Liara said, her voice quiet but firm. "Tomorrow, I will hold a meeting with my council. I've invited everyone who matters. It's time to see who stands with me and who doesn't." Ward nodded, though a part of him felt uneasy. He had been part of many operations in his career, but this felt different. He wasn't just executing a mission. He was stepping into a Game of Thrones, a deadly game where everyone had something to lose. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes," Ward said, his voice low. "But we have to be careful. This kind of maneuvering, testing their loyalty, it's dangerous. One wrong move and it could all blow up in our faces." Liara's eyes flickered with understanding. "I know, Captain. But I've been patient for too long. The truth needs to come out. I can't afford to wait any longer." She stepped closer to him, her gaze intense, almost pleading. "Ward, there are things you don't know about my family. Things I've never told anyone. Things I've kept hidden from even my closest allies. There are people within my circle who think they can manipulate me, control me. I need to expose them before they destroy everything." Ward's brow furrowed. He had known Liara was keeping secrets, but he hadn't expected this. There was a vulnerability in her voice now, something raw and human. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a woman caught in a trap, trying to find a way out. "What are you saying?" Ward asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What kind of secrets are we talking about?" Liara hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she took a deep breath. She glanced around, as if ensuring they were alone, before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father, the king, wasn't the man he seemed to be," she began. "He was a brilliant leader, yes, but he was also ruthless, willing to do whatever it took to maintain power. He made alliances with people who were dangerous, people who wanted to use my family for their own gain. Some of those alliances are still in place. They haven't been severed, not completely." Ward's eyes widened as the pieces began to fall into place. The complexity of the situation was more than just a political struggle. It was a legacy of corruption, betrayal, and dark secrets. Liara continued, her voice tinged with regret. "When my father died, the throne was supposed to pass to me. But his allies, my uncle Thalrix and others, are still trying to manipulate me, trying to keep me under their control. They think I don't know the full extent of the deals he made. But I do. I've been trying to untangle this mess for years. And now it's come to this." Ward leaned forward, his mind racing. "So, you think these allies of your father are still pulling the strings? That they're behind the coup?" Liara nodded solemnly. "Yes, and they're hiding behind my uncle. But it's not just him. There are military leaders, governors of distant colonies, all of them tied to my father's deals. Some of them have been manipulating me from the start, waiting for the right moment to strike." Ward let the gravity of her words sink in. This was bigger than a simple power struggle. It was about the very foundation of the empire, the legacy of her father, and the dark truths that had been buried for far too long. Liara was right to be fearful, but the question was, how far would she have to go to uncover the truth? "I can't do this alone, Captain," Liara said, her voice trembling slightly. "I need your help, now more than ever. I need someone who can see the danger, who can cut through the lies. Someone who will stand with me, even when the truth is hard to bear." Ward stood up, his face a mask of determination. "You won't be alone. We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll expose them, and we'll make sure your empire is protected. But we need to be careful. We need to move strategically." Liara nodded, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "I trust you, Captain. I'm counting on you." For the first time, Ward realized that this wasn't just about helping a princess or saving an empire. It was about something deeper, about standing up against corruption, about doing what was right, no matter the cost. And as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he knew one thing for certain. The battle they were about to face would test them in ways they could never imagine. The truth was out there, buried beneath years of deception. And it was up to Ward and Liara to uncover it, before it was too late. Captain Jack Ward's boots clacked against the smooth surface of the royal ship's corridors as he walked alongside Princess Liara. The air around them was still. The only sound their footsteps and the hum of the ship's engines beneath them. The weight of what was to come pressed heavily on Ward's shoulders. Tonight, they would meet with the council, the very people who held the power to decide the fate of her empire. And in that room, amidst a sea of allies, there would be traitors, people who would be willing to do anything to see Liara fall. Ward's mind was in overdrive. The plan was simple, at least on the surface: expose the traitors, test the loyalty of her advisors, and see who was truly on their side. But nothing about this was simple. The subtle game of politics and power was far more dangerous than any battlefield he had ever known. One wrong move, one misstep, and the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for Liara, but for the entire galaxy. Liara, for her part, seemed calm, though Ward could sense the underlying tension in her posture. Her regal demeanor was in place, but her eyes betrayed a deep unease. She wasn't used to being on the defensive, not like this. Her hands, clasped in front of her, tightened slightly as they neared the meeting room. "We're about to walk into the lion's den, Captain," Liara said, her voice low but steady. "But we have to do this. If we're going to survive, we need to know exactly who's with us and who's been working against us. There's no room for hesitation." Ward nodded, glancing over at her. "And once we know who the traitors are?" he asked. "What happens then?" She looked up at him, her gaze intense. "Then we deal with them. Carefully. I've spent too many years walking on eggshells. Now it's time to make sure my empire is in the hands of those who truly want to protect it." Ward didn't reply immediately. He understood the weight of her words. She was asking him not just to protect her, but to help her reclaim something much bigger, her people, her legacy, her place as the true ruler of the Ziltharian Empire. As they reached the doors to the council chamber, Liara paused. The guards standing at attention opened the massive doors without a word, revealing the grand room beyond. The walls were lined with holographic displays, and a long, polished table stretched across the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of high-ranking officials, military leaders, and advisors. The room fell silent as they entered, every eye turning toward Liara. The air was thick with anticipation, and, Ward thought, something else: suspicion. It was impossible to ignore the subtle glances exchanged among the council members, the barely veiled tension that simmered just beneath the surface. These people had been with Liora's father. They had been part of the old regime. And now, some of them seemed to be eyeing her with barely disguised contempt. Ward stood by Lyra's side, his hand resting casually on the sidearm holstered at his waist. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to protect the princess and uncover the truth. His mind was sharp, his instincts alert. He knew that one wrong word, one misplaced gesture, could trigger a deadly chain of events. Liara moved to the head of the table, her posture regal and commanding. She looked around at the gathered council members, her eyes pausing on each one for a moment longer than necessary, as if weighing them. Finally she spoke, her voice strong but carrying an undercurrent of uncertainty. "I've called this meeting to discuss the future of our empire," she began, her gaze sweeping over the room. "I've been made aware of growing dissent within the ranks, and I need your honest counsel on how we move forward." Ward could see the flicker of tension in the eyes of the council members. Some seemed unsettled, others defensive. They all knew what she was really asking. "Who can I trust?" "I trust none of you," Liara continued, her tone suddenly cutting. "Not without proof. Varnak wasn't just a soldier. He was a player in this game, and he wasn't going to make it easy. I accuse no one." "General," Liara responded, her voice measured but unyielding, "I simply ask for honesty. We all know the empire is fractured, and I need your loyalty. I need to know who stands with me, who stands with my uncle, and who stands for nothing but their own power." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a soft, almost imperceptible chuckle came from the far end of the table. A woman named Lady Miralith, a high-ranking governor with a reputation for being calculating and cold, leaned forward, her lips curling into a smirk. "You've lost control." "Liara," she said, her words sweet but cutting, "no amount of posturing will change the fact that you are not your father. Your rule was never meant to be. And soon, the galaxy will see it." Ward's hand tightened on his sidearm, but he didn't move. This was it, the first real sign of open hostility. Liara's eyes flicked briefly toward him, a silent request for patience. She was letting them speak, letting them show their true colors. And he could see the glint of calculation in her eyes. She wasn't just reacting. She was planning her next move, but the tension was thick, and Ward could sense the battle lines being drawn. Liara was right. This was no longer about whether she could rule. This was about whether she could survive. and whether those who swore loyalty to her father would allow her to do so. The game had begun. And Ward knew one thing: whoever held the power in that room would control the fate of the Empire. The air in the council chamber was thick with tension. Captain Jack Ward stood at attention, his gaze scanning the room, his senses sharp as ever. Princess Liara sat at the head of the table, her regal presence still commanding, despite the barrage of threats and distrust she faced. The council members, divided between allies and enemies, were beginning to show their true colors. But Ward knew that this was just the beginning. The real test was about to begin. For hours, they had debated the fate of the Ziltharian Empire. The same faces that had once been loyal to her father now openly questioned Lyra's ability to rule. The atmosphere was charged, every word a potential spark that could ignite an explosive conflict. But Lyra remained calm, poised, despite the venomous remarks thrown her way. It was clear that she was no longer the young princess who relied on the wisdom of others. She had become something more, a ruler forged in the fires of adversity. As the meeting came to a halt, Liara stood, signaling to the gathered council members that it was time for action. She had already learned what she needed, the true loyalties of the room. Her uncle Thalrix had as supporters Varnak Miralith, and others who were more concerned with power than with the good of the Empire. And then there were a few who had remained silent, their loyalty still uncertain, their minds shifting like the winds. "Captain Ward," Liara said, her voice steady, yet carrying a sense of finality. "It's time to show them who truly holds the power here." Ward nodded silently, his heart pounding. He had expected to be part of a subtle strategy, a political game where words and actions were like chess moves. But this was different. This was a show of strength, a test not just of Lyra's leadership, but of the council's willingness to bow before her. She wasn't just asking for loyalty anymore. She was demanding it. Ward stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the silent room as he moved to stand beside Liara. There was no more pretending, no more subtlety. The time for games was over. He could feel the intensity in the room, every eye on him, every council member waiting for Lyra's next move. "We've played your game long enough," Ward said, his voice cutting through the tension. He wasn't speaking just to the council. He was speaking to the Empire as a whole. "Your loyalty has been tested, and it's come up lacking." Liara's eyes remained locked on the council, but there was a flicker of something deeper in them. A hint of resolve, of power that hadn't been there before. It was the moment she had been preparing for. The moment she would prove to everyone that she could stand on her own. One of the council members, a wiry man named Thorn, leaned forward, his voice laced with suspicion. "What are you suggesting, Ward?" he asked, his tone accusing. As if Ward's words were a challenge, Ward's gaze never left Thorn's. "I'm suggesting that Liara doesn't need to prove herself to anyone. Not to you. Not to her uncle. Not to anyone. She has the strength to lead this empire on her own. And if you can't see that, then perhaps you don't belong in this room." A murmur ran through the council. Some faces flushed with anger, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The display of confidence was a bold move, but Ward knew it was necessary. Liara was no longer a princess pleading for her place. She was a leader asserting her right to rule. Liara stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. "You think my reign is a joke? That I don't have the strength to lead this empire?" Her voice rose slightly, challenging them. "I've lived through more than you can imagine. I've seen my people suffer. I've seen my father's empire crumble, and I've watched as those closest to me betrayed me. You think that I'm not fit to rule?" Her eyes swept across the room, daring anyone to challenge her. General Varnak, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke, his voice filled with contempt. "You're a child in a woman's body. You think you can just step into your father's shoes and make decisions that will affect millions? You're nothing more than a puppet, Liara, and you'll fall, just like he did." The words struck Liara like a blow, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze head-on, unyielding. "Your time is over, General. I don't need to prove myself to you or anyone else. You'll either stand with me, or you'll be crushed beneath the weight of your own arrogance." The council chamber was filled with an almost suffocating silence. The tension that had been building over the past hours hung heavy in the air. Captain Jack Ward stood at Liara's side, watching the council members carefully. The game was no longer subtle. The lines were drawn, and each person in the room had shown their true colors, some out of loyalty, others out of ambition, and many out of fear. General Varnak was standing now, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with anger. The rest of the council remained seated, their expressions a mix of disbelief, intrigue, and doubt. Ward could see the hesitation in their faces. Liara had proven she could stand tall. But the question now was whether they could accept her strength, or if they would push her further into a corner. Liara had made it clear, her father's allies would no longer control her destiny. She would rule, or she would fight. There would be no compromise. No more hiding behind shadows or pretending that things were normal. Ward stepped forward, his voice calm and deliberate. "The Empire has suffered enough from indecision. And so has this council. No more empty words. Liara has made her decision. It's time for you all to make yours." Liara's eyes swept over the room, her gaze unwavering. She was still standing tall, but there was something different now in the way she carried herself. She had shed the skin of the uncertain princess and become the ruler she needed to be. Her words rang out with finality, echoing in the silence of the chamber. "You all know what I'm capable of," Liara said, her voice steady and commanding. "And I've given you all a choice. Stand with me or stand against me. The time for games is over. This empire is mine to protect, and if you cannot see that, then you will be swept aside." A few of the council members shifted in their seats. There were those who had hoped for a less confrontational approach, those who wanted to keep playing politics. But now it was clear there was no room for compromise. There was no room for half measures. Liara's empire would either rise with her at its helm, or it would fall. "I trust you, Ward," Liara added, her gaze meeting his for a moment, a silent understanding passing between them. "But now we have to see if they will trust me." Ward gave a slight nod. The situation was now too far gone to turn back. The council was no longer simply a body to advise. It was a battlefield, a place where decisions would be made, alliances tested, and lives changed forever. He knew what Liara was asking of him, to stand with her, not just as a soldier, but as the protector of her future. The silence lingered. Then, from across the table, Lady Miralith spoke up, her voice smooth but filled with an unmistakable edge. "You think you can intimidate us with threats, Princess?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "Do you think this is some kind of power play you can control? This empire is not a game for a child." Ward stepped forward, his eyes cold and direct. "It's not a game, Lady Miralith. And Liara is no child. She's the future of the Ziltharian Empire, and if you can't see that, then you are nothing more than a relic of the past." The room held its breath, the air crackling with tension. Miralith's lips twitched, but she did not respond. She had underestimated Liara, and now the consequences of her miscalculation were becoming clear. Lyra's voice broke the silence once again, this time softer, yet carrying a quiet authority that made everyone listen. "I know what you think of me," she said, her gaze sweeping over the council. "But my rule will be one of justice and strength, not of fear and manipulation. If you are not with me, if you cannot help rebuild this empire from the ashes, then I will not hesitate to act. And I will do it without hesitation." Ward could see that Liara had become more than just a princess or even a leader. She was a force of nature now. Her words, her confidence, her resolve were like a beacon to those who had once wavered. But to the enemies who remained, they were a warning, For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, General Varnek, his face twisted in fury, finally spoke. "You will regret this," he spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you've won, but you've only just begun to understand the depth of the betrayal you're about to face." Liara didn't flinch. She remained calm, almost serene in her response. "You're wrong, General. I understand it perfectly. And when the time comes, you'll be the one who regrets it." Her words rang through the chamber like a final judgment, and Ward could feel the weight of them settle into the hearts of the council members. The power had shifted irrevocably. Liara was not just asking for their loyalty. She was demanding it. The choice had been made, and the consequences of that choice would reverberate across the galaxy. With a swift motion, Liara turned her back to the council and walked toward the door. Ward followed closely behind, his eyes never leaving the faces of the council members. Some were still in shock, others angry, but all knew one thing. They had just witnessed a turning point in the history of the Ziltharian Empire. As Liara reached the door, she turned to face them one last time. "The Empire will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt by those who are willing to stand with me. Those who choose to fight for a better future." With that, she exited the room, leaving the council to decide their fate. Outside the chamber, Ward and Liara paused. The weight of the moment still hung in the air. But Liara's expression had softened, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly. "We've made it this far, Captain," she said quietly. "But the real work begins now." Ward nodded. "The Empire will follow you, Princess. But you've already proven you're ready to lead." Liara looked at him, a small, genuine smile crossing her face. "Thank you, Ward. Together we'll make sure the Empire survives." And as the two of them stood there,